here again on a Wednesday stream for Scrimba. It's been a while, a couple of weeks, but very excited today because I'm joined by none other than Jay Tompkins. Yes, fabulous to have you here, Jay.
Whoa!
For joining us.
Sorry, I hadn't muted you in the other window.
No, that's happened to me many a time. Do not worry. Double Leanne is more than anyone needs. Yeah, thank you for coming along. If you are just joining us, lucky you. Yes, because Jay Tompkins here is a creative web developer and code teacher, also known as the master of dev fun, I've read. He's known for creating fun apps and games and has a track record of building some of the most hearted code pen designs, and you'll see why very soon. Alongside creating fantastic projects such as, let me share, the Impossible Checkbox, Turbo Kitty, and the Tuggable Light Bulb, some of which you can see on the screen right now. Jay has also taught a range of courses about web and game development. And in this stream, he'll introduce us to the wonderful world of creative web development. We'll talk GSAP, animations, CSS, Jay's awesome projects, game development, did I say that already? And much, much more. And we do these streams live because we like to welcome your questions. So anything you want to know from Jay, or less likely from me, but you never know, drop them in the chat and we'll get through as many as we possibly can. But first, welcome, Jay. Yay.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a long time coming.
Delighted to have you here. Lots of exciting things to talk about. But the number one question, which I think you're perfectly qualified to answer, is how do you get really good at CSS?
Humility is key. That's like my ethos for a lot of things. So I think with CSS, it's just practice, right? So you can like I think the question you put to me was like, how do you get so good at CSS? And it's like it's like a perception, it's like an opinion. Like I never sort of look or perceive myself in that way. I'm just really curious. So there's so many things to learn and go off and do that I just dig in. So if there's something I want to make, I'll go off and learn about it. Or the saying I always think of is curiosity might have killed the cat, but it built the bear. So that tends to be what I go. It's a brand for me, right? But yeah, I don't never pedestal anything, and just kind of don't be afraid to dig in, and yeah, just have fun with it. Do like practical things, and then yeah, just build what you can when you can, and just don't feel defeated. I guess just keep going.
Yeah, great advice there. Sakila says, I'm coding something using Threejs as this stream plays. Pretty cool timing. Yeah, I understand you use Threejs a bit, Jay. Is that right?
I have. An article came out today, actually, on Smash Magazine for audio visualization with JavaScript, and one of the demos in that uses Threejs. So it's like a visualization of an audio waveform that you get from your microphone or like playing in MP3 or something. And yeah, you can see the output visualized. It's pretty cool.
Here it is.
Good timing.
Yes, it's as if we planned it, but we also did. There's the article for you to check out, should you wish. Trey says, hello everyone, love the humble tone. Yes, very nice indeed. Sylvia is wondering, best tips for finding errors within CSS? Good question, Sylvia.
This one's tricky. So this kind of leads into something else you asked me previous, which was what is app property? So CSS is like one of the trickier things to debug, right? If you need to be comfortable digging into the element inspector, and that's like the best thing you can do. So dig in, start playing with values in DevTools. Like DevTools are incredible, so you can do so much with them. But it depends really what you're trying to. What kind of error you're dealing with. So if it's like a layout thing, or if it's like a, say it's like a media query thing, then the rendering panel in DevTools is fantastic. So you can like flip between light and dark mode, or flip prefers reduced motion on and off. Even things like device orientation, you can do in DevTools. Like DevTools have come a long way since we needed to do things like put a red border on everything. I mean, I know that trick does the rounds on Twitter, but it's not overly necessary. But yeah, applying like ugly backgrounds to things does work. But app property is an interesting one. So I don't know if we'll get onto that, but like that is like stricter type checking for CSS custom properties. So for example, you could set a variable in your CSS that was like of type number, and then in your CSS styles, say you wanted to use that variable or you overrode it with like an image, it wouldn't allow you to do it. Like it would just fail. So that's quite an interesting thing, and like we'd love to see that in all the browsers. Currently, it's only in Chromium 85 onwards and Edge. I think Safari and Firefox are like a little bit behind. Hopefully, we can like drum up that property.
So run us through that one more time. Then this CSS app property. I'm guessing it's something new to CSS.
Yeah,
it's almost.
Yeah, so essentially, it's like I mean, I made some slides for it recently, and I referred to it as type styles. So you have different syntaxes that you can apply to custom properties. If people are familiar with custom properties or custom variables, and it's where you begin like a property with hyphen hyphen. But the app property is like custom properties on roids. Like it's a bit extra. So you can say whether a property is inherited by rules or whether it has a particular syntax and what its initial value is. So I could say, here's my custom property and it's a color. And then I apply it to a background somewhere else. And then I might try and override that property. So say we had a property called my background, and then I tried overriding it elsewhere with a URL, then it would fail because it's not the right type. But the web side of that property is because we're giving that context to the browser is actually able to transition these values where it couldn't before, which makes for some really interesting like use cases and possibilities. So for example, being able to transition gradients, or being able to do things like, instead of sometimes when we have a CSS animation and we try and do multiple transforms throughout a keyframe, instead we can do it like, we can flip that on its head and do it like in a more kind of methodical declarative way. So we might have a transform that was, say, a translate, which would move it, and then a rotation. And we might have done a keyframe before where we say like, oh, at 0 it's translated 0, it's rotated 0, and then at the end it's it moves X 100% and then it rotates 45 degrees. But the way custom properties work is we could just animate the properties and only declare the transform once in the style. It's kind of a weird thing to grok the head around. I have that article that I wrote an article all about it, and then there was a demo. Let me just ping that to you. It makes sense. It's easier to understand in a demo because it's like you can see it. You can see the styles flip. And then there was I think, where did
It's animating powers. Here we go.
There was a demo I made the other day. Let me just find it. Because that one kind of shows it better. So another way to think about it was a demo I did the other day, which is transitions for separate parts of a transform, which is something we haven't been able to do without like introducing extra elements. And that is also quite a... So this was the tweet, but the demo is... Oh no, that was the tweet link. That's the demo link.
So look at this. Ooh.
Okay, so in past times, you would have probably done something like wrap each individual piece in its own div and then rotated the things in it and done like a keyframe to switch or like a transition. But because we can just take one transform and do different transitions for each property, we can say like go X, then rotate, then do that with different delays. And it just makes it just opens up a lot of opportunities. And I think it's really exciting if this gets adopted more, like what people come up with. So it's one of them. Like it's really exciting space. Like CSS is really going places this year. So
game-changing stuff by the looks of it. That is extremely exciting. That's brilliant. So I hope that's helped you all, well, understand the new app property and what it maybe can do for us.
Something to get excited about. Start shouting at the browser vendors to put it in Firefox and Safari.
Absolutely, yeah. So keeping on the CSS topic, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about the process for creating CSS art.
I can, and I can tell you it's a very painstakingly long process.
It looks it.
Yeah. So, it's been a while since I've done any, really. I spent quite some time doing it, and yeah, it's super time consuming. But it's great for sort of honing how to do certain shapes and things like layouts. So I spent a bit of time messing around, and then obviously I wrote an article on it naturally and put that out. And I haven't really touched much of it since. I've kind of moved more into doing like 3D things for fun. But the CSS art, the process to go is to kind of think about it as you're just tracing an image. That's how I used to go about it, unless it's something that I know I can do that's pretty straightforward. But in most cases, it's not going to be like that. And you see some people out there doing absolutely crazy things now.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it's a good way to level up things like gradients, positioning, border radius, those kind of properties. But I think one thing I found in my experience is after you've done like a few of them, you kind of get so used to writing gradients and border radius, and it's like, okay, what's next? What am I going to move into next? Because they take so long. So like for me, the absolute masters are probably, and I think I show a couple of their demos in that article. This goes against what I was saying earlier, because I said like, oh, I don't like to put anyone
Yeah, but then you look at that.
Yeah, like that's incredible. And
That is.
Like, yeah, it's Ben is really good as well. He does some incredible, just incredible pieces of CSS art. Like they're just, yeah, he'll take a photo and just turn it into CSS, and it's just ridiculous. But he will admit himself, he'll say like, oh, it takes me months. I don't have the attention span to do it for months.
I don't think many people do.
I'm constantly, so my whiteboard behind is like constantly demos and ideas I'm coming up with, because I want to keep like moving and making things, and yeah, I'm just constantly coming up with stuff. So if I was to sit and just do like a month on one piece, it would be tough for me. I think I'd really struggle.
Yeah, this caught my eye. Pay attention to responsiveness, because once I decided to make some CSS art, I made a rabbit, which many of you will have seen because I later used it for one of our code challenges on Scrimba. But anyway, I made this rabbit and I was really, really pleased with it. And then I showed it to my husband, and he instantly resized the browser, and all its eyes just expanded away from its head, and its ears were like up in the ceiling. And so, yeah, basically, I hadn't paid attention to responsiveness. So, yes.
That's the classic.
Yeah, I was quite devastated. But in the end, it was a relatively easy fix, but finding that fix was the problem, which I think sums up CSS quite perfectly. Yes.
I think like every dev as well that checks out something like made with CSS, it instantly is like, right, resize the browser, what happens?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Ben Fisher's website is a perfect example of how to cater for resizing a website though.
What was that?
Yeah, I can't remember what her URL is. Although if you probably Google her, it probably comes up. Yeah, Linen Tonic. So yeah, if you I don't know how. Yeah, I guess if you go into Inspector and then like resize it, but as you resize it, it basically goes through different scenes. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen this actually. Yeah, it's super cool.
I mean, it does give you a hint in the top left now to resize it, but yeah, if you resize it, it does a lot of different things, which is amazing. And that must have taken some time to come up with. It's is really good.
Okay, yes, brilliant. Marta is using /learning GSAP animations and feels it will be a love-hate situation, which brings me nicely onto my next topic, which is, what is GSAP and what can we do with it?
Firstly, it's all love for GSAP. Don't get frustrated. Get frustrated. Also, if you do get stuck, just go to the forums, because people in there are super helpful and really responsive. Like, I hop in there. Sometimes I'll make something and I want to ask if I've done it the best way possible, and I'll hop in and ask, and people are super helpful. There's so many experienced like animators in there. Yeah, it's crazy. The amount of like the knowledge pool. So if you ever get stuck, hop in. But yeah, GSAP, I guess you reach for it when things start getting a bit more complex, or like you need to start interacting with things. The other side of like GreenSock as well is that it offers so much more than what people kind of see on face value, I think. So a lot of people will think, I want to animate SVG, so I'll just grab GreenSock. But you can use it for like so many things. You can animate. What I try to hammer home in like many of the articles I do is you can animate anything with GreenSock. It basically animates values, so you can do whatever you want. But they also have all these plugins, so scroll trigger, draggable, like inertia, and all the plugins you can use for free on CodePen if you get involved and want to make some cool things or try out different plugins. Yeah, you can try them all for free. So yeah, it's really good when you want to start like hooking into like events, so the end of an animation or timing things together, or doing like more complex things that get tricky to do with CSS. Paul Schoof, he might lynch me for pronouncing his second name wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that. But he did a series, I think it's a couple of years ago, where he did like an animation challenge series. And it was showing how to do like certain things with, I wonder if I can find it. Let me see what I'm link. But he did like a video series of doing different animations and how to approach them. And I tried to do them all in CSS, and it was painful. And his thing was basically showing you that it makes more sense to do some things in GreenSock. I'd have to try and find his. Let me see if I can find it, because it is quite a good thing. Like, his videos are pretty good. Well, he's a great teacher for GreenSock. That's one person I would recommend. He has a lot of material. So it is TV animation challenge. Is it this one? Aha. I think I found it. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Right, so it is these. So he did these different challenges where they're not like overly complex visually, but they're like move a square from here to here, and then after so-and-so seconds, move it from here to here. And they really show off how powerful GreenSock is and how much easier it makes it to do certain things. But yeah, the flip side as well is when you go further down that route of just like thinking outside of the box of like, it doesn't have to be something visual or like something physical, like, and in terms of physical, I mean like a DOM element or something that you're moving. You can do things like Canvas, Threejs, you can move like all sorts of things. So that audio viz guide is about like moving things on canvas with GreenSock, but you can do other stuff too. Like, so I did a demo earlier for CodingCat.dev, like a little prototype thing, and I was animating the volume of a cat purring. So when you put over it, like it got louder, and then when you went off, it like muted itself, but it did like the audio fade out. So like things like that are really cool. And there's another example coming up which you did link me to, which was the DJ one, and that's an example of doing something that's a little bit different. So
shall we have a look at that then?
We can do if you want.
Let's do it.
Come through.
Yes, well, it's only one way to find out. This is a project Jay has made. Let me know when you want me to put your screen.
Yeah, just go for it. I've got it open, so I don't know if it will work or how it will come through. But
Here we are, Superstar DJ.
So I built this. It should still be working fine. Yeah, so this was actually for the release of a GreenSock plugin called Scroll Trigger. I think it's a couple of years ago now. And we got asked before release to come up with some different demos. And the classic like parallaxy kind of Apple advertising page was kind of getting done, I guess, more so. And that's what everyone springs to mind. That's what springs to mind, right? These fancy parallax kind of on scroll animations, because they look great. And there were some really good ones made, but I wanted to try and do some things a little bit different. So I had one that was a scroll that was like a gun that would shoot. And then I had one that was like a book. And as you scrolled, it like turned all the pages. And then I think I had one that was Pinocchio. And as you scrolled, his nose grew and it translated the story in. And then this was my favorite one. So this is a DJ deck and it's just spinning. And I don't know if this will come through. It's going to be really loud on my end. But what happens is essentially when you scroll, you are able to scratch the music. So
I like its face.
So it's an example of, as you scroll, you're animating the time stamp of the audio being played. So we're actually scratching it backwards, and it actually creates pretty close like the actual DJ scratch effect, which was, I don't even know why this popped into my head, but it did. So and it was a really fun one to make. So it was like a different idea of how to go about using it, and it kind of hammers home that point of like, oh, I didn't need to animate something physical. So in here the code is scroll. I haven't looked at this for a long time. Where would it be? So there is, here we go, scroll trigger. And in there will be somewhere where it says, it should be in there. I should have looked at this. So take the current audio track, and then in here, we're animating the current time, and then moving the playhead of the audio element, whatever the source is being set to. And then, making sure the playback rate works. And then if you scroll past the end of the window, then it just goes to the front of you. So there's like a challenge that you wouldn't really come across in your day-to-day, but it kind of shows you how to do something outside of the realms of the docs, and kind of like, it kind of harks back to what I try and do, which is the creative coding side of things, to kind of level up, and it kind of gives you that confidence. So I feel like I can take on pretty much most things that people ask. I just limit myself to my imagination. So I will just go, right, I'm going to make that, and I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. And if I get stuck, I'll reach out and see if someone else knows how to do it. And that's how you learn, right? So the skill of being a developer is problem solving. And if you can solve all these kind of problems that you come up with just for fun, then you're kind of pretty fearless when it comes to day-to-day and stuff like that. So it's that's kind of how I go about it. That's why I'm these weird things.
Sounds good. And what was the process of making that like? We talked about CSS Art being slow and painful. How did this compare?
These are great because these are SVGs. So I would have probably used Inkscape at the time for this, which is a vector graphics program. So I'd have just created the shapes in the graphic editor, put it all together, and then the actual animation of this isn't too bad. It's just rotating the head, the face even, with a slightly offset transform origin. There isn't too much animation in this one. It's pretty all right. So like the CSS that's in place is mainly for colors and coloring it. So I will, if I don't have a design in mind, I'll go and browse around something like Dribble and get ideas for what might look good. So I probably looked up DJ decks or like scratch pads or things on Dribble until I found something that kind of looked like I could make it and also that I liked. And then I'd go down that route. So also you have to think about when you're going to approach something like this, you need to think about how easy it's going to be to animate. So before I even make this, I'd have been thinking, right, what part am I going to spin, or like, how's it going to work? What parts are going to be, am I going to need to grab and move or access, or how am I going to group things? But it's one of those, like, over time, the more you practice, the easier it gets, and the easier it is to spot those things. Funny enough, I've started putting together a process for taking SVG and sort of bringing it to life this morning. Started making notes on it and things, which is on the other side of the page. So yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Next steps.
Totally. So when you make something like this, or make anything actually, do you make a design and then code it up, or do you just go straight into the code?
I usually, so a lot of the, depends what I'm making it for. So sometimes things I do on stream, I literally enter the stream with a keyword in mind, and then it comes down to, and I'm in a fresh notebook at the moment, so it'll be better to get a more scribbled in one out. But it'll be a case of, let's find one that's clear enough to show. It tends to be, I have an idea and then I just kind of hop into an editor and just kind of go for it. Or I'll try and find a good one. I was going to find, I know there is one in here actually for, bear with, there's one for that light bulb demo.
Ew, the light bulb. I will find the light bulb. Here we are. It was right ready on my screen.
I know it's in this book. I'm pretty sure it's in this book.
It's a tuggable light bulb.
There we go.
Which was very satisfying because you can pull this in all directions and turn the light on and off, and it makes a nice noise.
So I tend to scribble. That's what I end up doing. So for that light bulb, I've worked out how the chord should look in different stages, and then I've created that in a tool, and then they were all individual paths that are then morphed. That's how that works. So most of the time I don't design. I just sort of go for it. I've tried doing the design and then build it, and whenever I do that, most people just say, "Why don't you just build it straight away?" Because you can. And yeah, most of the time I'm just like, yeah, you're completely right. It just makes more sense. Especially for work or something, I'll probably sit down and plan something out, but it's different. Like when I'm doing things for work, I'll be thinking about accessibility, or I'll probably be building like user-facing components, not so many like whimsical things. Like the main thing with these is the design improves over time, because I learn design as I go. I don't think you ever sort of complete learning it. So that's evolving over time, and it's about, like, most of the demos are trying to find new ways to do things. So each thing I do tends to have some kind of problem I've solved, or something I thought, I wonder how you do that. So for example, that one there was, how would I make a chord tug, and how would I make it look like it springs back? And then how do you make that handle work? So that's a GreenSock plugin that's draggable. And the interesting thing here is you use a proxy when you grab it, and then wherever you take your mouse will take the chord, and then it just springs back. But because it springs back, it plays the same animation each time. It just kind of looks, because it happens so quick, it happens to look okay. Like it looks like it works. And the idea for this was, it was going to be the dark mode switch on my website. And
wow.
In the end, I was like, nah, it's just too much. So I just went with a standard sun and moon.
Well, it's a very nice light bulb. I find it, very enjoyable to look at.
It was quite an interesting one to make. So it kind of, it went from that, and then it ended up in the most hearted of 2020, which was pretty cool. And then I took it further and made it into a demo where a bear opens a door and pings it back when you do it.
I think I've seen that one as well. Yeah.
It's like it's one of them, like you get to that point and then you're like, oh, I wonder if I can make it so it looks like a bear pulls the cord as well when you pull it. And then it snowballs. And then next week you'll be thinking about some other kind of demo. So like I've got a ton of like Wordle related ones that I've not built at the moment.
Oh, that's exciting. Looking forward to that. Yeah. Usman has a question. Is it good practice using CSS Glassmorphism in a real-world project? Very good question, Usman.
I can't think of a project where I've needed it actually or used it. It's one of those trends, right, that you see all over Dribble. And I think, if I'm not wrong, the #1 code pen of last year was Glassmorphism. I might be wrong, but I think it was like a layout that had been created, and I think it had features of Glassmorphism in. But obviously the issue with Glassmorphism is accessibility is one. You need to get your contrast like on point, and browser support. I think it's supported in most places now. Yeah, I think that first one, I think that first image, I think that is what somebody made for CodePen or something very similar.
All right.
But yeah, I think seeing that one, it doesn't look like, I guess it is kind of blurred behind, but mainly backdrop filter blur in CSS, and I don't know if this tells you, because I don't use it. I couldn't tell you if it's supported everywhere or not.
So for those of you who haven't come across this before, it's this kind of glass effect that people have been using the last year or so, I guess. But you're saying, Jay, that one of the problems with it is mainly to do with the contrast, it sounds like.
Yeah, it can be a bit tricky. If you do like a smoked panel on top, it can look okay and you can get away with it. But the issue is that the way people have been reaching to implement it is CSS backdrop filter with a blur. So you can apply like that glass effect really easy, just one property, but it's not supported everywhere. So it's not supported in Firefox, which is like a bit of a killer.
Yeah.
It looks nice, but it's very, I always get like and that's a good example. Is that like a credit card?
Yeah.
It gives me those kind of like Challenger Bank fintech vibes.
Yeah, I can see that definitely. So, very good question, Usman. It sounds like you can get away with it, but it's prone to problems, I think is fair to say.
Maybe on your personal and see how it goes. Although I tried with a good friend, Niall. I'm not sure. Well, I don't think he doesn't have this on his site anymore, but he did try doing this kind of blobby Glassmorphism thing for a while. And if it's not supported, you can try and fall back to like SVG, but then it's a lot of effort. Worth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Each to their own, of course. Some people love it, but
yeah, thank you for that. Going back to GSAP, some people may be wondering, how can you get started with GSAP? If they've never heard of it before, I think it was Marta earlier said she's running into some problems with it, and you mentioned the forums. Is that these ones up here?
Yeah, so if you hop in there, and then, the GSAP one at the top.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. So if you run into any problems, lots of helpful people here.
So much in there. And that's one of the big things with like development as well. Like no question's a bad question. Like you can ask anything in there. People are happy to help. And it's really active. Like you can see, like there's so many posts and they're only like hours ago. It's really good. Like the people are very knowledgeable, very helpful. I've tried covering a lot of GreenSock stuff. So I don't have a course done yet, or like a video sort of course on it. I've tried covering some things. I think it's kind of a tricky one because you want to do something that covers, it's finding like a demo that covers all the major sort of pieces and then empowers someone like instantly, so you don't feel lost with it. Because it can be intimidating. Like GSAP 3 is really nice. Like it changed a bit since GSAP 2, and it just kind of tidied up a little bit. But yeah, I think once you get the grasp of how tweens work and timelines, you're pretty good to go. But there used to be tween light, tween max, and it all used to be different things you'd have to pull in, and now it's just GSAP, timeline, tween, done. So it's the API is much like cleaner and nicer now.
So you just pull in GSAP from a CDN or something, is that right?
Yeah, so you can use, if you're going to use CodePen, they have the autocomplete for the plugins. So the plugins are behind like a membership. Some of them are. Like the popular ones, Scroll Trigger's free. But some of the, I think like Inertia and things like that are behind membership. But if you use them on CodePen, CodePen has like CDN links that you can use. But you can also use GSAP via Skypack, which is quite an interesting one if anyone likes Skypack. So you can just write import GSAP from https cdn skypack dev/GSAP and use it straight away if you're using script type module, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I think the thing with GSAP is kind of, I mean, their docs are great. They kind of cover it a lot. And they have a getting started link just up there. If you, yeah, that get started page. Kind of takes you through things, and they have a lot of video content on there, so there is some good stuff.
And check that out if you want to get started with GSAP. There is a page called Getting Started with GSAP, so that looks very handy. And just to clear something up for me, is GreenSock the same as GSAP? Or is...
Yeah, and everyone kind of, you never know which one to use when. So, so I guess GreenSock is like it's kind of interesting because on the site, obviously it's greensock.com, and then they have like GSAP, so GreenSock animation platform, but then people will just refer to using GSAP as using GreenSock. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I need clarity on that now.
More or less interchangeable anyway, I think. Yeah.
People will know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Let's talk a bit about SVGs, because you have some nice projects with SVGs. I think the Turbo Kitty, if I'm not mistaken, one of my personal favorites. How do you use SVGs?
So SVG was a funny one. I started a limited company quite a few years ago, and I didn't want to pay for a designer to make the assets. So I'd seen people doing SVGs on CodePen, and I thought, right, I'm going to have a go at learning how these work. So I went off and created all my brand assets and kind of went from there. And the best thing to do with SVG is to grasp like the foundation concepts. So SVG kind of works in like layers. And when you want to create shapes, you learn how to do things like union, or like a subtraction or a division. So say you wanted to create an L, you would do like two rectangles and then union them, so they're like joined as one piece, and then you'd be able to move around that one piece. Once you get your head around the kind of SVG concepts, it becomes a lot easier. And tools like Figma, Figma's probably the easiest one to use, but it doesn't have some of the power features that say like an Affinity Designer or Inkscape or even Vectornator would have. I always refer to, and this is what I learned with, let me find it. It takes a couple of watches, but once you've watched it a couple of times and the concept starts sinking in, it's good. So this was the video I started with. So it's how to create a donut in Inkscape. And if you watch that, it kind of gives you a really good like overview of the concepts of creating vector graphics and how tools work. So I think in about 15 minutes, it shows you how to make that donut from scratch. And it's pretty cool. Like, and then you can take those techniques and apply them elsewhere. And things like Figma make life pretty easy. There's a lot you can do in Figma that's a lot easier in Figma than it is elsewhere, and vice versa though. So like complex kind of path manipulation is kind of tricky in Figma to get accurate sometimes. But yeah, SVG is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, but that's good to know, because that looks really complex. But you're saying basically watch this.
It's quite good. So if I was to try and make that off the top of my head, it would be so when you get into so you can kind of see the UI there for Inkscape. You would select like a circle, drop a circle in, and then to make the hole in the middle, you create another circle, put it on the center of the big circle, and then you'd select both of them, and you just go into the tools, and there'll be like a path tool, and it'll be subtract, and then it will just leave the big one with a hole in the middle because it takes away the little one. So it'll take away whichever one is the last selected, I think. And once you get your head around how tools like that work, you can kind of make or draw whatever sort of comes to mind. It's one of those, again, it's like a practice thing. And then getting it into a browser, there's a few different ways to do it. So you can run it through an optimizer like SVG is a good one that's online. And then if you need to get into React, SVGR has like a command line tool, or you can use the online playground, and you can just drop an SVG block into it, and it will give you a React component code to just take out and drop into your repo so you can start using it. Yeah, SVG is a fun one. Once you get those core concepts, you can kind of take it and make whatever you want with it. And then it's kind of, when you start animating with it, it becomes a case of you'll start learning about clip paths and filters and grouping things. That tends to be the next steps. So when you want to animate particular things, or you want to join things together or make them move together, you'll end up editing the SVG code yourself, maybe to group stuff. Also, you'll find that when you want to animate something, it's handy. That's when GreenSock gets really handy, because things like transform origins, it can handle really well. It will calculate for you. Whereas in CSS, sometimes it can be a bit of a pain, depending on how where you create your SVG. So
brilliant. Yeah, I believe, I'm not sure, that this Turbo Kitty, yes.
This is one of my favorites as well.
Me too. That'll be a surprise to absolutely no one. But yeah, look at it go. So can you talk us through how SVGs are used in this one?
Yeah, so yeah, like I say, this is one of my favorite ones, and this is one of the first ones I made. I made this on an iPad. So really? I drew it with a little stylus. So I would have started by just creating the SVG itself. So there's not too much to it. So it's a big sort of oval for that. So if you were to split that, there's an oval for the head, and then an oval for each ear, and then it's a rounded rectangle for the body, the legs, and the arms, and they're all the same. And then the jetpack is like another rounded rectangle. But for that, I think I would have done a rectangle and a rounded rectangle and joined them. So the top half would be curved, the bottom would be flat. Then the streams are all just rectangles of different colors. And then I would have had just one circle. And then I would have created, so in the JavaScript, I'll just be creating different bubbles that just scale up and down in GreenSock. And then the head will just bob, because it's just, I'll just create like a transform origin and just have it rocking on the rotation. And then the tail. So what you do for that tail is you create 3 versions, or maybe 2 actually with that one. I create 2 versions of the tail, one that's wiggling that way and one that's wiggling the other way. And there's a plugin for GreenSock where you can morph between 2 paths. and I'd have just got the tail and said morph between the two at like a speed, and it will just look like it's wiggling, and then I'll just rock the arms and the legs as well. So there's not too many animations, but it seems to work well. It's like, it is one of my favorites by far. I do like this one.
And what about those falling stars in the background?
So that is just funny enough, I think some of the vector tools have like stars out of the box. So you can just choose shapes and just drop them on. So the stars, I think, in Vectornator are out of the box. So I'd have just taken the star tool, created 3 or 4, dropped them in different places, and then I'm just translating them off the screen and in and out of the screen. So with SVG, one of the little tricks is that by default, an SVG is overflow hidden, but you can make things go outside of the SVG by just explicitly saying overflow visible. So then you can see outside of the view box. So the stars probably go from outside the view box all the way down, out past the screen, but they you can see them because the overflow is set to visible. It's probably set to visible important in CodePen, because I think CodePen has a funky thing where you have to set it to important. One of the only exclusions for using important in CSS.
Yes, that and HTML emails.
Yeah, yeah.
Had some fun.
Oh, we don't want to talk about them.
No. Trey Japan speaks for us all with this cat heart eyes emoji.
I try
Aisha,
and use cats or bears wherever I can. So
that's a good policy. Yeah. Aisha is asking, will this be available after the live session? It will be. Yes. You'll be able to watch it back on Scrimba's YouTube channel. Yes. Tell us about the bear, Jay, and how it became kind of your thing, and what was the inspo behind it.
I honestly have no idea. I try and think back, and I just don't know where it came from. So originally, my logo was a cat.
Oh.
It was a cat on, I can't remember where it came from. It was like a cat on a skateboard or something. It's always been the hat, so I always tend to rock red and black as a hat for some reason. And then I used to wear like shades all the time, but I don't really wear shades anymore. That's why I've done a refresh of my logo. Now it's just more simplified. So yeah, my company had bear in the name, and then I don't know what it was about bears. It just kind of became a thing, and then it's just stuck around. So I have like demos with bears, stickers with bears, key rings with bears, t-shirts with bears, just bears everywhere. So
it's a good way to live. Speaking about demos with bears, there is one. Here it is, the impossible checkbox.
Yeah, this is one that's been funny enough. So this is one of the first things I built with GreenSock and React. And it was one of the first things I built with GreenSock in general, to be honest. I think this was one of the first demos where I was thinking, how would I use GreenSock with React? I must have been doing a lot of React at the time and wanted to bring in animation. And then I thought, right, I'm going to try and make this. And yeah, this was like a second iteration. I think the first one maybe was without React hooks, and then the second one brought in all the hooks and streamlined it a bit. I think the first one would have probably been before GSAP 3 as well. So the idea for this, I think, you know, like those money boxes where you can put the coin on and the paw pops up and takes the coin. I saw something like that on probably like Instagram or somewhere, and I was like, I wonder if I could turn that into something. And then they used to have like those, I don't know, like those little switch box like toys. It'll be like a wooden box with like a flip toggle, and you'll turn it, and then I'll leave it like a hatch will open and like a little handle pop it back or something. And I was like, that'd just be so good for a checkbox. And then it was a case of like, can I make a bear? So there's some interesting challenges with this. It's not so much just the checkbox opening, going from active to inactive. It's how do you make the bear's hand like look like it goes around the side?
Yeah,
like, that's really tricky. So that's like two pieces to that. There's like essentially like some knuckles that are an extra element, and then they scale up and kind of it happens so quick that you can kind of get away with it without questioning physics too much.
Looks brilliant.
That's half the trouble sometimes with these designs or these ideas. It's the idea will be there, but then it's how do you make it look quite how you want, or like how design might come out in your head one way, but it doesn't quite translate. I'm thinking of one particular example. Let me see if I can find it. This is a good example of when you create something and then it doesn't go anything like you think it's going to.
We can all relate to that. Anyone who's ever touched CSS, I think, will understand what you're saying here.
So this is a good example.
All right. CodePen.
I like seeing people's reactions when they open this stuff.
There we go.
But if you keep smashing it, yeah. So when he comes out again, it should keep like you should be able to rumble it. There you go.
This is extremely satisfying. Some anger management there.
So this was like this was one of those, I want to make a Hulk smash something, and it completely went in a different direction to what I thought. And this is one of those like, oh, how am I going to make it look like he walks away? Like it's really hard. Or like, how's he going to fly out? And it's kind of those like, right, we'll just think of it like a really long perspective. So he just, to make it look like he's walking away, he doesn't go anywhere. We just scale him down on the y-axis so it looks like he disappears. But it's so I think sometimes you just kind of go in a direction and hope it kind of works. Also, the noise for that was perfect. I just happened to be looking for audio on Freesound, and that came up with like a cat and a garbage can being crushed or something. So.
Yeah. I promised people we would talk a bit about game development. So cool. I'd like to ask, how do you tackle developing games? Because you've made, well, I think quite a lot of games. Whack-A-Mole is one of my faves, and a Mario Kart one, and various others. But
yeah, so games are an interesting one because they don't come up too often in terms of like work, I guess. But they're often a fun way to kind of show how to learn something. So particularly with that Whack-A-Mole sort of themed React app, that was a way to kind of grok React. So that's like a DOM-based game with GreenSock, and in React to store like the state, like a high score and things like that, and how to process interaction and timing. And then there's the other side of it when you start doing something like a Flappy Bird. So you'll probably reach for something like like when you need things to start getting performant, you start reaching for Canvas. And a lot of game development is actually so this is an interesting one because there's no sort of game mechanics to this one, but this is just no HTML. It's just the body, and it's just styled with linear gradients. So
really? Wow.
So yeah, just I think it's just a pseudo element on the body tag, and then I think both pseudo elements are used, and it's just a lot of linear gradients and radial gradients that kind of give this perception of a bear riding along on a track in like the old school Super Mario way. I think this one was inspired by, I remember seeing a talk or a blog post a few years back where someone did a CSS like working kind of to an extent Mario Kart, where you could tap controls and he would move left and right, and they had a lot of sprites and things. And that's kind of where the game development part, the pathway will take you. If you get into game development, a lot of it comes down to spending time designing assets and things you want to get involved, like things you want to have in your game. One of the great well, probably the greatest kind of asset resources is probably Kenny Game assets. Like he has so many. And let me find a link. Yeah, free game assets. There's so many good ones, and they're just all sprite sheets, different things.
Oh.
And then I guess if you're going to get really, really into game dev, then totally start going down the Unity route, because that's going to be probably, if you're going to create stuff for the web, I think Unity is one that I've not been able to dig into too much. Like a lot of the things I make, like if I make like a fun game or something, sometimes it's trying to like push something in the browser. Unless it's Canvas, I want to do something kind of performant. It's more about, could I make this game with just CSS, or could I do it with a particular like technology? Especially now, a lot of the games that sort of take off are quite, like the UI isn't particularly complex, right? So like Wordle, for example, do that in the DOM. You can do that as just a web app, and it's a cool project to do. It's different to a to-do app or like a simple kind of I don't know what other kind of demo apps people build these days. What's another good example? Blogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, trying to come up with something that's a bit different, I guess. Just to sort of flex something different. It's something different to show if you're going for an interview, especially when you're earlier in your career. You want to try and show things that stand out, right? I remember one thing that I always used to get asked when I'd go for interviews years back was like, oh, how did you get your GitHub profile to look how it does? So I always have images in my GitHub commit graph. And I used to use like a Python script to do it. And now I think the 2020 Hacktoberfest, I made like a web app so anyone can do it. So you go on and you draw exactly what you want, and then gives you a script. So if you scroll down, then my actual commit graph will have like a picture in it. There we go.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So yeah, you can go off and like draw whatever you want, and then it will give you a zip file, and then you run the shell script, and then it just pushes all these commits up. So that's like a cool project to show someone that, and it essentially, what it does is it works out how many commits to generate, and it generates all these empty commits, and then it runs it on your command line and pushes them up. And then you give it a few minutes and refresh, and then yeah, you can have anything you want in there. So like some examples would be just to have like hire me, or completely block it out, or whatever you want really. Write your name, anything. So
So do you have to wait like from May to February for the whole thing to run, or it kind of fiddles?
No. So it runs in about it depends how complicated your drawing is. So it'll take about, I don't know, a minute or two, and then you have to wait for it to refresh on here. So you just run it from the command line. You can see it all doing it, and yeah, you just go to the repo's on there. So if I get the link for it,
sounds like you can doctor your contribution graph. Well, you are, yeah.
yeah, you can.
Who knew? This has been eye-opening.
So that is the site, and then the GitHub.
Oh, here we go. Oh, I never knew that. As Vineet says, that's brilliant.
This is the repo. And then if you scroll down in the repo, there are some examples of what people have done. So you can have like...
Look at that. Nice.
So you can have like, yeah, just complete, like block out, write whatever you like in there, draw pictures. It's just like, because it kind of has no... Well, it depends how you look at the graph, right? I kind of feel like it's either gamifying constant contributions, or like what value does it really serve? Like you don't gain a lot of context from looking at them. They just look cool. And especially at Halloween. So for mine, I have like a Halloween setting where it's like a pumpkin and stuff. I just change it over for Halloween. It takes like 5 minutes to run. So
and people think you've been planning for Halloween for like the last year.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, this project there was originally a project called Get Fitty, which was like a Python based thing. And then they you'd have to write out your design in arrays of numbers, and it's quite tricky to do. So that's why I built this, which was like a user interface for it. So it's a lot easier for people to use. But yeah, you can see it populates a lot of commits. So like that one, it probably populated around 25,000 commits, and it probably took about 5 minutes to run. But if you want to block it all out, you can. So
the option is there. One final question from Vasquez is, have you ever used one of these, meaning
any of these demos? Yeah.
Yeah, in a professional website, or is it just for fun?
I have used them. So that's one good thing when you do a lot of these things. So I guess that's the actionable takeaway here, right? If you create these fun things, you're only there's only benefits. So you're leveling up your own skills to be able to tackle anything random people come at with you, but you'll also get potential opportunities for it. So you'll also be able to tackle these things if they come up in a work setting. So I do get things like animation projects and things, but I've also had people come to me with freelance and be like, I want some fun on my website. How do I do it? Or I would love to bring this icon to life. How do I do it? And it's really useful. So one of the things you brought up was ghost buttons in your list. And like that was, I know that's not super whimsical, but that was something I built, and then it actually got used on Temporal. So like it took the process there and restyled it for their buttons. And they have like these, I think they're still on there. So they have like these directionally aware buttons everywhere. And it's like, that's cool. Like I made that, you know?
Yeah.
We also had like on a previous version of their website, we had like a starscape backdrop made in Canvas. And then wherever you moved your cursor, like the stars lit up more.
Oh,
kind of cool. And then it had like a Konami code. So you could type on your keyboard and then all the stars would go like party mode, like different colors. Someone, so Faraz came to me, I think last year, and I did like a wiggly, like Mexican wave cat. That was pretty cool. Like that was for a loading sequence on his like SaaS app. So that's cool. But yeah, the opportunities come up. They do. I'm just thinking of the freelance ones, but they really do come up. And again, it's having the ability to kind of go beyond the docs, I guess. So when you get these challenges, you can just kind of take them head on and be like, yeah, I know how to do it, or I'll know how to do it. That kind of confidence.
And I think especially these days, you never know when someone's going to want to add something fun to their website. So
Exactly. I didn't want to, well, I'm going to have to say it now because it's coming to my head, but I didn't want to say about like Web3 and stuff, but you never know. Someone might come to you with like an NFT project and they just want a load of random like HTML things made. It happens. Right? It happens. Being able to do this kind of creative stuff can be really useful. And it is super useful. Even when, say I create like the bare checkbox, yeah, I might not drop that on a site anytime soon, but if someone says, hey, we need to animate this or like do something with GreenSock and React in our app or this project, I know how to do that. Let's do it. Like the skills are applicable, and you can take them to different places. So it's really helpful.
Brilliant. That is a lovely sentiment to end on. Well, it's been a fascinating hour, and we learned that we can doctor our GitHub charts. So there's a takeaway for you all. Thank you for joining us, Jay. Very enlightening and inspiring to hear from you. And I hope we'll talk again soon.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Bye for now, everyone. Bye.